and welcome. I'm Kalpana Singhal, founder and chief editor, CXO TV, a flagship brand of Techplus Media Group. And today we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Rajkumar Ayyella, Chief Information Officer, KEC International, a subsidiary of RPG Group, for this very interesting fireside chat. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Rajkumar.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Nice that I could see you in live. Yes, ma'am. We can go.
Same here. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Rajkumar, you have an elaborate experience of over 25 years in the engineering and manufacturing industries. Can you please highlight the top 3 things which excite you about these industries?
I've actually got exposed during my tenure with multiple companies in various industries as such, but particularly the manufacturing sector has a lot of qualities, which I would say rather, which is generally used in the across industry as such. But things like the project management abilities, things like commitment to quality, things like familiarity with safety and environment standards, having commercial awareness, ability to work in constraint, problem solving skills. So there are many other things which we actually tend to learn, working with the manufacturing sectors and also the EPC space in particular also.
EPC, what's that?
It is engineering, procurement and commissioning.
So how is Industry 4.0 revolutionizing the manufacturing world as we see higher tech adoption with the pandemic, like you said? And what are the tech adoption trends you see in India?
I mean, if you look at the technology trends, particularly within manufacturing industry, is what we could see is, like, for example, I can take an example of EPC space itself. If we are labor intensive organization, and when we look at labor intensive organization, we need to have labor working on project sites. Yeah. Okay. And particularly organizations like us, we deploy resources across the globe. I mean, if you look at one of the businesses, T&D, which is a major contributor of the revenue, is transmission and distribution lines. Where there is no power, we are actually laying out, transmission lines over there. We are looking at railway electrifications. We are talking about building oil and gas pipelines. Whenever you talk about all these areas, there are a lot of challenges in these areas. In the sense, you can't expect internet to be available over there. You don't have an internet, we don't have power available, then whatever modernization technologies which we talk about and all these things will have no role to play as. Like, for example, 5G and edge computing, technology which is used extensively in terms of automation of the factories, things like, we started, the dependency, and when we look at supply chain has been an issue for almost all the industries, including manufacturing sectors, because when you look at supply chain, because of various issues, non-availability of manpower, depending on single suppliers or single supplier failures, or finding multiple suppliers, or reducing the distances between the point to point where you get the raw materials, including simple things like identifying the suppliers itself has become a major challenge for all of us, because one guy cannot actually provide us the entire materials which is required, and it has been a big challenge for almost all the companies as such. So this was, I would say, this disruption, and the steel prices has gone up drastically, and it actually affected us on the bottom line also. So I mean, like us, every company has gone through the similar issues because of pandemic and supply chain issues as such.
Yeah. So you were talking about some advanced technologies, like how you leveraging emerging technologies like IoT, AI, ML, analytics, or blockchain to deliver a high level of customer experience.
Yes. See, I mean, when we look at the technologies, I mean, particularly new age technologies we talk about, but these have been in an existence for quite some time as such. So if you typically look at started working with various vendors, and also the customer side was always been a challenge for all of us. First is, once the pandemic has hit all of us, see, there are various means through which, we need to keep this communication intact with all the customers as well as vendors. So first of all, when we look at the customer side, our customers are mostly the government bodies, and we could see a lot of resistance coming up from them because their operating methods are different from the adoption will take larger time at that side. So at least we started looking at Zoom, started giving them, we have used technologies like, Zoom as well as particularly the teams and all these collaborative teams were being extensively used to ensure that any kind of feedback which they need in terms of during manufacturing process, quality inspection aspects, everything has been checked through these collaborative tools, and we could ensure that the clearances could be done without much disruptions. Second is we created an RFID solutions where we could track the entire movement of stock, particularly from factories to the end customer, as well as track and trace within the factory was also enabled in a very short period of time, so that we will get to know whatever needs to be manufactured for because ours works on everything works on a make to order concept. When you then they will be able to track what is happening with their dispatches and all, and where it is lying, and they could track it till it reaches their endpoint. So these were all being taken during this period, during pandemic itself.
So, what are the initiatives you have taken to, bring automation and bring a kind of a re-engineering in your processes?
I would say, okay, there are a couple of things which have taken as a massive projects. One is a project we call it as a lighthouse. Okay, this is a certification which we normally take for supply chain plants. So this has a lot of KPIs which have been defined from our side in terms of the reduction of the cycle times, impact on commercials, adoption of process reengineering wherever we require, and adoption of technology platforms. So these were all some fundamental guidelines on which we created a roadmap for the supply chain. And similarly, we also worked on something called world-class engineering, wherein we took the entire process from start to end, in the sense like from a tendering process till it gets closed, and from closure to once the execution starts till the end of the project. So these were all the steps which were being taken, looked up what are the technologies which can be adopted, and look at whatever the for example, in engineering we use AutoCADs, BoCADs, and all these kind of software. So we need to know how the handshake could work between one step to the next steps, in the sense when you get a tendering document, how quickly do you think you will be able to create a top sheet for that, or summary sheet of that, and then how do we ensure that a design is created, and finally the turnaround time can be increased on all these things. Similarly, we took the quality aspects also. When you look at quality aspects, we need to know how many times, how many cycles have been done, and why, how do we improvise on the cycle time, in the sense like if you are taking about 10 days to do it, we took a challenge of doing it within 2 days time. So we have used AI ML, we have used machine learning capabilities, we have used RPA, we have used all the technologies possible to ensure that all these days data goes into a common data lake, and then we will be able to make a meaningful analysis of this, so that we would be able to reduce. One is, so we actually earmarked it in terms of saying what is something which can be done through process engineering, what can be done by adopting technology, and what can be done as an analysis after things have been done. So we took all these KPIs and started building the technologies in and around that.
So, how do you think businesses can accelerate their digital transformation amid challenges from COVID-19, and what is the strategy you would suggest?
If you typically see, I think the more emphasis which started during pandemic was, see, the way we were doing business has got disrupted, in the sense like all manufacturing plants, even project sites, and even corporate offices would not work. It doesn't work. Work from home culture doesn't fit in for the manufacturing businesses, because you still need manpower to be working on project sites, as well as you need people who are working on the production lines also, or else nothing would work for us. So that was a challenge which we started. But this is on the business side. But what was important for us at that point of time as an IT was to ensure that there's no disruption in terms of corporate offices and what kind of things needs to be done. So, okay, let me put it back in terms of a strategy. I think this is a known fact that everybody got affected by this. But what we did was, particularly what I have done is I created a roadmap. And it was a roadmap considering various aspects. One is on the technical side. If I say I took a project called infrastructure modernization, and second, I started working on IT security as a second roadmap, and third roadmap was application modernization, and fourth was the digital part. So and the fifth, which was a major area, was in terms of governance and control. So these were all the 6 legs on which I was working. So the first project which I took, I mean, luckily it was started before even the pandemic was hit for us. So when I look at infrastructure modernization, the technologies like VDIs, moving to cloud, creating network topology where I would say mesh technology was deployed, I consolidated them into two partners like TCL and Airtel so that he provides network across. So a lot of strategies have been laid out. I can talk more about it depending on the time availability you have, Kalpana. So everything was being articulated and created as a roadmap. And I first worked on infrastructure modernization because that is the backbone for all of us. Second important area was the security. If you typically look at security, I started with something called zero trust environment. When I say zero trust, we don't trust either way. So we have deployed something called SOAR, which is security operations and automatic response, which is works on an SIM platform, which is a big data platform, which will be like a watchdog for all of us in every area. Then I worked on SASE. I worked on endpoint. So it started initially with EDRs, but later moved to XDRs, which is extended detection and response on the endpoints. I started moving all my workloads to cloud. So there are a lot of tech things which have been taken in parallel with the digital deployments, because unless and until you don't have your base ready, you will not be able to start up with any activity. If there are risks in terms of security, if there are risks in terms of data thefts, if there are risks in terms of you cannot store the data and you cannot make an analysis of it, it makes no sense. And so we were working parallelly on both the ends, but we started with the roadmaps which could sustain and help us in the long run in terms of infrastructure modernization and all these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can understand the principles that you mentioned. When it comes to the strategy, building the strategy, and how you did it during the pandemic, and even the journey started before that, as you mentioned. So digitalization has increased the number of data sources, and according to you, how enterprises can best leverage the data for improving business performance? And also, this exponential data growth has led to the complexity of securely managing business transactions. So,
Correct.
what new security threats have emerged in today's digital age, and how are they different from the past? If you can throw some light.
Okay. If you typically see, security is one of the became a major subject for me also. I mean, it just started before the pandemic, but in pandemic has actually helped me to deploy my roadmap. Okay, when we wanted to talk about any digital projects to be rolled out, unless if your things are not secured, you will not be able to roll out anything. Okay, that's where the bottleneck came up. Okay, for the organizations to work, yes, as I told you, the core and non-core activities. That's the way I decided moving about the strategy. Okay, when I say core activity, I was having data centers, co-locations, and everything with me, and you will not be able to manage on your own. And scalability of it or expanding it for rolling any digital projects or the exponential growth of the data which is coming from different sources, you cannot keep on provisioning things for this, because it involves a lot of capex and then it needs a lot of thought throughs to be done. So that was where we took both the activities parallelly. First was the infrastructure modernization, wherein any project which we plan over here, we need to be securely deploying it. Okay, for that, what you need to do is, what I have done is I moved almost all the workloads into cloud. Cloud gives you the option of and flexibility for us to avail and services which you wanted. You can also work in terms of you wanted to do a POC today. This infrastructure with all the available application and everything is, I mean, the platforms like SaaS or PaaS is already available for you. You can just leverage on it. Earlier, what used to happen is you need to provision everything, and other important aspect which was coming as a bottleneck for me is the skill set of the resources. And you cannot rely on people, because every day the technology is changing, manpower, I mean, the situations and challenges are changing, and you cannot run the, I would say rather your resources and their knowledge base also becomes a constraint for you. So you will not be able to run the show like that. So that is where I said core activity of bringing the business value is within my hand. and non-core activities where managing a data center, managing, workloads, taking up backups and all these things has to be managed by a partner who's expert in that area. And that's where we moved almost all the workloads towards cloud. We talked about creating we have gone ahead with managed services for SOC, which is Security Operations Center with third party. So these are all, I would say, rather core activities are towards business value, and non-core activities are managing infrastructure, managing skill sets of the people, which will not be possible. So all data centers have been moved out. AMS contracts have been signed out. IMS contracts have been signed out. These are all activities which needs to go to the partner who can manage it in a proper sense. And similarly, what is more important for all of us is that we need to create an ecosystem so that there is a governance and control in terms of whatever we are doing is always under our control. Okay. And that's where we need to set up a governance model. And that's where we worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, there has been a huge skill gap, and you have been meeting those challenges of the skill gap by partnering with the technology company or maybe outsourcing it. So, while planning any technology initiative, what capabilities you consider that enable you selecting the right technology partner, or I would say the vendor or a solution provider for executing these projects?
So as I told you, whenever we look at from a macro level, we cannot go into skill levels, Kalpana. This is what I have understood. For example, what we talk about as one technology, if you cannot give him the roadmap for next 2 years or 1 year, it makes no sense. What is important for the organization are that you should be able to have the architecture under your control. You should be able to create strategy in terms of your roadmaps. You should be able to create, for example, DevOps. Maybe whatever we talk about, we cannot keep on adding new skill sets into your own ecosystem because this is not an IT company. Our main focus should be more in terms of where you can get a business value. Okay, and there are partners who are good. I mean, if you typically look at new age, entrepreneurs and the companies, every day you get there are a lot of things which are available which can be off the fly used, but if you try to build and it becomes an overhead for you to manage it over a period of time, the best thing is you look at and capitalize on what you have in hand first, and then start subscribing new things which can be easily adopted. And if you don't like it, for example, we have a models like SaaS model, and if for example there are any platforms you talk about, you can easily you talk about even solutions pertaining to security. Today I am using EDR. Tomorrow I feel that I need an XDR. I can easily shift from EDR to XDR, and everything is available as a SaaS model. You can today you might be working on AWS. Tomorrow you don't like AWS. You want to move to Google Cloud. There are migration tools and available which you can easily do. So I'm talking about shifting from one data source platforms in terms of data centers to one data center to other data center. That is a massive thing. It is like you are doing a heart transplantation, so which can be easily done today. Okay, so what I am trying to say is, instead of going so deep into AI ML technology and say people should have Python lang, all these things, because it keeps on, yes, they should come with that background so that they will be able to create an architecture wherein you need to look at the entire processor from end to end. It is not from a technology standpoint, it is from a process and business value point of view. Then there could be multiple things which they can strategize and they can talk about. For example, I have already implemented SAP. So my core system is always SAP. So you need to build in and around this ecosystem what can be added into it. Okay. So it becomes it. We should allow people to experiment on things. So let them fail as many as possible. Then you should come back and say that this is a platform which is required, which can be rolled across all the business processes. You should be able to come to that kind of a conclusion. So there is an innovation team, there's an operations team, there's always a governance and control team. So you should split these guys into these 3 or 4 areas as such.
Yeah. And considering the interoperability issues,
yes.
Yeah. So we can build a kind of a framework, I mean to say,
yes.
which should be helping the business, meeting the needs basically, whatever initiatives or the implementations that we are doing, it's based on the needs of the
That's right.
business.
That's right, Kalpana. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Rajkumar, for sharing great insights, and it was a complete pleasure interacting with you today.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.